getting asked loads over the last few weeks about how much we're actually fishing for in a lot of these events, and more importantly how much it actually costs to be able to get there and compete in these events. This is by no means a fancy vlog. There's not going to be any fancy music, no fancy images, nothing. It's just going to be purely number crunching. So hopefully this is going to be of a bit of interest to some of you guys out there. The main question I've been asked is kind of what money we're fishing for and how much it costs to get there. One of the events that I got asked a lot about was the Larford Silverfish Festival, which took place at the end of February earlier on this year. For those that are interested in that, I'll put the link below to the video on that. There's a full-length video covering the full week. What I'm going to do is just run through the kind of money that we picked up that week and how much it actually cost for somebody like me with the approach that I have to actually go there and compete in that 4-day long festival. So let's have a look at the numbers. Larford Lakes, 4-day competition, and it's 125 miles from where I live in Sheffield. Okay, right, it's 125 miles away, so we obviously, because we're not going to travel every day, we need to stay in digs. Where we stayed, it was £30 each per night, so £90. Okay, that's for that, simple as that. We're staying down there, that's the cost of staying down there. If you don't stay down there, you can travel down there every day, but obviously it's very tiring and you'd be spending more on diesel. So next bit is a bit of a pick a number out of thin air, food and drink. Yeah, simply a meal every evening and a couple of drinks, £25 a night, you can do it. You can spend 17 times more than that if you're some kind of beer monster or whatever, but you can do it on £25 a night if you need to, so I've got to put that there. If you want to spend more than that, that's up to you guys. Okay, £75, there you go, 3 nights. Diesel, it's a one-way journey down there, and then obviously one bike. We're staying down there, so it's one there, one bike, so I've put that down, £30. Simple as that for diesel. Ground bait. This is a bit of an issue that I can talk about in greater detail, but I actually allowed for, we fished 4 days, £5 per day. I'm not saying that's how much ground bait I had mixed on the day, but that's what we used. Okay, so I'm putting that down at £20 for ground bait. Depends on what mixes you use and all that sort of stuff, so I've just got to pick a benchmark there. So I've put £5 for one bag of ground bait. It was end of February, you're not using a massive amount of bait, so that's just a ballpark figure. Bait. Built into this, you've obviously got chopped worm. It's a silverfish only, so you've got worms with you, you've got maggots, you might have pinkies, you might have casters. Pellets are obviously fishery only pellets at Larford Lake, so that's built into that as well. So I'm just putting that down at £15 per day. Okay, so that's £60 for the 4 days. I'm not saying I used all that bait, but in order to compete against these guys on these venues, you've got to have that bait with you. If it suddenly starts fishing really well, you've got to have the bait there ready to go, so it's got to be mixed and ready. You've got to allow for it. You might bring some of it home with you, especially the worms and stuff that you can keep, but you've got to have it with you, so it's got to be built into it. Pools, give or take £10 or whatever it was. I think it was about £160. That was for the week. Okay, so by my reckoning, and I'm rushing a little bit because it's late at night, but I still want to do this for you, 435. I think that's 435. Okay, that's what it's cost to get there, to compete, to pay on, and your digs down there with food and drink for 3 nights. So that's what we paid out. Then a super quick summary. As a lot of people know, and I'll put the link below for anyone who's interested. I went on, fortunately, to win the event again this year, and that was £100 to the winner. Fantastic. What you often find is if you're lucky enough or fortunate enough to go on and win a festival like this, chances are you've picked up money along the week, throughout each day as well, because you've done well. So usually on the top of that you've got some extra. And by my reckoning, I think through section money and a bit of super pool, it was about £300. So on the total there, £1,100. Okay, that's basically it. If you start looking at the difference between what we've paid out and that sort of thing, give or take, obviously you can make cutbacks wherever you want in fishing. strongly advise you just be careful doing that. I should think you do it, but don't do it too much, otherwise it'll spoil your fishing. Believe me, I've tried it. I don't know what you're making clear there, £600 ish. That's it basically. A lot of the bait that I talked about on there I didn't use because it was winter, and so I just didn't use it. But they're the actual numbers from that particular festival. But I've got a few points I'd just like to mention to you first. When some of those figures are written down nice and clear in black and white like that, it's just it's easy to think, oh yeah, that's clear profit and all that sort of stuff, you know. But there are certain things that that can really be important to festival fishing if it's something that you're thinking of getting involved in. One of them is your bait. You know, when I put the figure down there for what I've allowed for bait and that sort of thing, allowing for bait and using bait are something completely different. I've been on a match today where I've literally had half again of the ground bait left over from what I've actually used, and I've gone on to do well today, you know. But you've got to have it there just in case. You never know, there might be scenarios where you've got to put a bigger feeder on or put another line in. The last thing you want to be doing is mixing ground bait halfway through a match. It's just something I really don't like doing. So you've got to have the bait with you. So it's alright saying I might want to use 3 or 4 quid's worth of worms or whatever, a quarter of a kilo of worm. That's fine. But what happens if it suddenly turns into a red letter day and the fish are there? You need to capitalise on that, so you've got to have the extra bait with you just in case. Next little tip I can give you is plan in advance. It's amazing how much money you can save. Obviously when you're going on festivals like the one I've just discussed with you, you're staying out, you're staying in digs and that sort of thing. Book early. If you can book early, it's amazing how much money you can actually save. I know it sounds really simple, and you know sometimes it can be a pain in the backside trying to pin your mates down if you're travelling with them, or just trying to get them to commit to dates months and months in advance. But it can save you so much money. So just try and plan in advance as regards your accommodation. Next one is a biggie, and that's travel together. I know a lot of people like to travel on their own, and I'll be totally honest with you, there are many occasions where I like to travel on my own. Sometimes it's nice to just have your own independence, fill your own van up with your kit and just go off. It's great, but what I have got to say is that you miss out on so much when you do that, because obviously the financial benefits. If you're going on festivals that are quite a long way away, or you're staying in digs with each other, obviously all the costs are shared. They're divided between however many there are of you, so that can really dramatically reduce the amount of money that you're spending on getting there. You know, your diesel money, your digs and that sort of stuff. So if you're sharing with someone. But also the camaraderie and just sharing ideas. It's amazing how much information you can pass on to each other when you're sat next to each other in the cab of a van, you know, when you're driving to the venue and back and that sort of stuff. You can really bounce ideas off each other, and it might not be something that they've learnt, your mates learnt or caught, but it's, you know, the things that they've seen, if they've been in a different section from you and that sort of stuff, or they've seen something else that could help you. It's amazing how travelling together can really get you to share a lot of the ideas, and that can really help you in festivals. Another key thing is something that a lot of the top lads do, and that's share winnings. You know, it's something that we all have good draws, we all have bad draws, and if you're travelling with somebody, between the pair of you, you should get your fair run of good pegs, good draws and good days. And by sharing winnings like that, you know, if you're going through a bit of a bad spell but your travelling companion isn't, and he's winning, and there's a little bit of money coming your way as well, it helps to pay for your trip, and vice versa. It's good to repay that to him. You know, he's going to have, you know, times when he's not going to win every match, and it's nice for it to work both ways, and that can really be something that can really, you know, help out when you're travelling in festivals. Because, I mean, let's face it, we all have good runs and we all have bad runs as well, and if you're sharing with somebody like that, it's nice to keep getting a little bit of money back just to cover you, even if it just pays for a meal or some diesel or whatever. But that's, again, it's just another good tip that can help you out when you're festival fishing. Another little tip for you is, if you're going on these long journeys with festivals or just going on long journeys to matches that are a long way away from you, just try and plan in advance. You know, for example, it's the best way I can tell you, this is just purely by example, 125 miles away from me is Larford Lakes, 100 miles away from me is Barston. Now you can actually I could actually drive from here to Barston, and then it's only, I think it's 30 odd miles to Larford. So what I tend to do with one of my mates, Martin Edis from Sheffield, if you're watching, Mark, hello, is we'll go down to Barston if there's a match on the Saturday, fish a match on the Saturday there, which is great. We can have a meal there if we wish, or go on to digs then over near Larford. It's only 30 odd miles. We'll drive over there and have the Saturday night there, and then we'll fish a match if there's one of our interest on Larford on Sunday. And that way you're not making those long trips all the time. You're kind of hitting, you know, the specific matches in one little weekend. And the other big one really is just something that, I mean, even I do it. I'm fortunate enough to obviously be thankfully backed by Bait Tech, but something I've done for a long time is just kind of manage my bait. You know, a lot of people just order bait and don't even really think about what they're ordering, you know, and it's quite easy. We're all busy people, we've all got busy lives now, and to walk in a tackle shop and just buy 2 pints of this, 2 pints of that, or whatever, and before you know it, you know, you'll soon realise that, you know, especially in the colder months of the year, you're just not using all that bait. And if it doesn't bother you to waste that bait, that's fine. But if you're thinking about, you know, just kind of managing your bait and how much you're spending on your fishing, then that's something, just give it a bit of thought, you know. It's just about managing it. If you're using dead red maggots, for example, when you buy a pint of dead red maggots, it's not very often you're going to feed a pint of dead red maggots, unless you're cupping them in down a margin on a commercial. If you're feeder fishing, I often find that half a pint is plenty on a lot of the venues I fish. So all I do is when I get a pint of maggots and I'm going to kill them, bag them up into 2 halves. You know, that way you've got another one in the freezer ready, and you've got one for your day. So you're just kind of using all your bait. Casters are different to manage. Worms are very important, because you can keep worms. You know, you can, when you buy worms, if you don't use them, they can last weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, months even, if you look after them and feed them. So find a way of looking after your worms. You know, they're not cheap to buy; they're expensive worms to buy, and you really don't want to be leaving them in the back of your van or outside in your yard or in your bag where they're just going to die. It's wasteful, and it just makes fishing more and more expensive. Well, that's it really. I kind of raced through it. Not the most glamorous of vlogs, I know, maybe not of much interest to a lot of people, but hopefully it's just been packed with some figures, some tidbits of information that's going to be, you know, of interest to some of you who have asked those questions about the kind of money that we're fishing for and the money that it costs to get there, and just kind of how you manage to fish 4 and 5 day festivals and that sort of thing. So hopefully it's going to have answered a few of those questions for you. So thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, and there's plenty more coming, one every night this week. So yeah, great to see some of you on the bank last weekend. It was brilliant. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.